Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today is the 1st of May and I wanted to start my reading vlog for the Asian Readathon. This is happening all throughout the month of May and I'm currently planning to read 4 books, maybe 5 books for this readathon. And This readathon is a little bit interesting because you have reading prompts and then you have like an extra challenge to it. So there's 5 reading prompts and the challenge is that for every book you read, it is from a different Asian country, basically. So for example, you can read a book that is somehow related by the author or the protagonist to China, and then the next book you read would have to be from another country like Japan or any other country basically that is Asian. So that's kind of like the main setup, and with some of these challenges I will stretch it a little bit because I don't really have a lot of books here with me right now that fit the challenges and that also do this like extra challenge thing. So yeah, I'm just gonna talk about it. So the first book that I've also started already for this readathon is Darius the Great Deserves Better. I think I will read that one for the Asian author, I believe, and that one has or the character. I always get confused, but basically, you know, it's challenges and I read 5 books and they're all kind of different. So Darius the Great Deserves Better is a sequel to Darius the Great is Not Okay, and this kind of series focuses on a boy called Darius and his mother is from Iran, and yeah, it's all about his life. The first book was set in Iran mainly. The second book now is set in the US, and I will listen to that on audiobook. I already have started it. I might have listened to about 90 minutes or so, and it's just such a wholesome read because it's, you know, just very mundane. You just follow Darius through his life. He's on the soccer team. He has a boyfriend for the first time, and his family is struggling financially because they took this long trip to Iran, and yeah, so that's kind of the themes. Also, Darius is working in a tea shop, and that is also something I really enjoy because I love tea. So yeah, just a little extra bonus point. And also Darius is suffering from depression and he's on medication for that. And yeah, it's just all about his life and how it's going with school, the tea shop, and his family and boyfriend, basically. Then the next book I want to read is this one. The English title is The Almond Tree. It is by Michelle Cohen Corasanti, and this book I will read for the Asian protagonist. So the other one was for the Asian author, this is Asian protagonist. And this book follows a boy in Palestine, and as far as I can tell from the back, his sister is killed when she's very young and he has kind of to take care of his family, and it is about, you know, the conflict of Palestine and Israel, I believe, but this is also set in the 50s, so it is historical fiction. And yeah, this is a book that my mom gave me years ago because she loved it so much and she wanted me to read it. And yeah, I'm very intrigued. I'm a little bit worried because the author is Jewish and from America, so I hope that this will be a good portrayal, and on the back it says that it is a very good portrayal of both of the sides. So yeah, I'm very interested to read this, and I'm gonna count this for Palestine because, as I said, the main character is from Palestine, and even though I think he later goes to Israel to study there, that's still his identity, basically. Then next I have this book, which is a bit of a stretch, I guess, because this is not written by an Asian author, as far as I can tell, but it's a collection of myths from Japan. And so I think that the myths that are in there are actually the originals, and it just has like commentary and explanations to help readers that are not from Japan, and obviously it's translated. So yeah, this is also a book I had for such a long time, and I kind of forgot about it. And then when I was looking for, you know, Asian books on my shelves, I found it and I was like, oh my god, I've never read this actually, even though I love reading about myth and stuff like that. So this one I want to read for the challenge to read a book that is not US centric, because obviously it deals with the myth of Japan. And yeah, I'm very, very excited about this one, and I'm kind of frustrated that I haven't read it yet. Okay, then we have a challenge that is to read a non-fiction book by an Asian author. And for that one, I want to read Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is probably a very hard-hitting book because it deals with rape culture and stuff like that. I still really want to read it because I think the topic is so important, and I think I will listen to that on audio as well as soon as I have finished Darius the Great Deserves Better. And this book will count for China because the mother of the author is from China. So I think that fits. And then the only challenge I haven't figured out yet is to read a book by an Asian author that is in my favorite genre, which would be fantasy. And I don't have any book on my, you know, owned TBR that fits that challenge that I haven't read yet. So I know that there's a ton out there, but I'm not quite sure whether I want to buy a new book for this readathon. So I will keep that one open and just, you know, do all the other challenges first. And then I want to see whether I actually fit a fifth book in there. So these are my reading plans, and I will keep you updated throughout the month. Okay, so I listened to some more of Darius the Great Deserves Better, which is my current audiobook for the Asian Readathon. I'm almost halfway through now, and a lot is kind of happening in this book. But at the same time, it's just such a wholesome read. I just really enjoy the tone of the book, because even though it deals with very hard topics, I feel like the tone keeps it light enough, so it's very enjoyable to read. So yeah, there's a ton going on. Like, first off, we have Darius and his family, and obviously they're in some financial trouble, and I'm interested to see whether this will get a little bit more focus in the second half of the book, because right now the only explanation is kind of that they went to Iran for a long time and now they don't have a lot of savings left, basically. But yeah, I just have a feeling like there's more, but we'll see about that. Then we have Darius' sister, Lale, and she is one of my favorite characters. I loved her in the first book because she is just a snarky 9-year-old, but yeah, Darius loves her so much, and you totally see that they have this special connection that siblings sometimes have. And with her storyline in the books right now, she is suffering from microaggressions and racism for the first time, really. Darius explains that she has been kind of white passing, and yeah, I'm not quite sure about the whole terminology there, but basically his mother also said that Iranians are white. Since I don't really understand where the boundaries of white and POC are, yeah, I can't say anything about that, but the kind of topic is still there, that people call Lale a terrorist because you know, she spent the time in Iran and now they know that she has, you know, a mother that is Iranian. And before that, people didn't really know that about her, and maybe even didn't wonder. But I think that is a very interesting storyline, and I really feel for that little girl who has to go through this for the first time, and even her closest friends are turning on her and calling her names, and it's just really hard. But at the same time, you see the amazing love that Darius has for his sister, and he went through similar things and he just wants to be there for her. And I feel like in that way, it's not that devastating to read about, because you always have this layer of love and, yeah, siblingship that is surrounding that theme. And yeah, just Darius not wanting his sister to go through the same things that he went through when he was smaller in school. So yeah, I love that theme. I think it's very important to talk about, and also well done. Then we have Sarab, which is the best friend of Darius who lives in Iran. And honestly, like, I love him. He is such a great character. I already loved him in the first book, and now obviously they have this like long distance friendship, which is hard to do, but we get a few glimpses when they Skype and stuff like that. And there's this scene that really made me cry, and this is a little bit of a spoiler. It's not a major one, but yeah, just so you know, if you want to go completely blind into the first book. But there's this scene now where Sarab talks about his father, and how his father always said he couldn't really understand people who wanted to leave Iran, even though they belong to, I think it's an ethnic group, or maybe religious. I'm not quite sure about that. But they belong to a certain group in Iran that are targeted a lot and persecuted. And so his father was thrown into prison and actually died there because he belonged to that group. And then, yeah, Sarab being like, he always saw the same thing. He always thought that he didn't really understand why people would want to leave Iran, but now he can see that he doesn't really have a future there, like he's not allowed to go to university there, and he's actually thinking about leaving this place that he calls home and that he loves so much, but that doesn't love him back. And that's just so devastating, you know, just the thought that you know, you can't stay in the place you call home because there's just no hope. Yeah, that really made me cry. I thought that was such a strong moment in this book. And yeah, just tons of other things. Obviously, it's a lot about being gay, being, you know, a teenager, having your first real romantic relationship, trying to figure out how far you want to go physically in that relationship. And also Darius has a lot, not a lot, but he has some body issues, because when he was smaller, he was quite chubby, and especially his father, but also his mother, would always kind of not make fun of him because of that, but just say things like, oh, why are you eating bacon? Don't you want to eat some vegetables? And stuff like that, just these small microaggressions concerning weight. And so he has internalized a lot of that, so he feels quite uncomfortable in his body, and that plays a big role in his relationship, but also in his soccer career, because he always feels like he's not as good as the other guys because he is a little bit more chubby. He doesn't have that flat stomach all the other guys have and stuff like that. So I love that this is in there as well, because it is a very important topic for a lot of teenagers, especially in the US and in Europe. So yeah, just overall important themes, but so, yeah, just so wholesome to read about, all the little tea things that are thrown in there. It's just great. I just really enjoy it. So yeah, that's my little update on Darius the Great Deserves Better. Hey everyone, it's time for an update for the Asian Readathon. We're actually almost halfway through the month, and I have not finished a single book for it yet, but I don't feel bad about it. I am almost done with my audiobook. I have less than an hour left. So I'm listening to Darius the Great Deserves Better. And yeah, I already talked about it a lot. So yeah, I don't really have anything else much to say. I'm very excited to listen to the end now. I'm very worried about Sarab because, yeah, some things. So I hope that he as a character is okay in the books. I'm very worried about him. And then also, I think it's interesting, you obviously have that kind of triangle with Darius, his boyfriend Landon, and then Chip. And I really like that it's not like a simple love triangle, because the cover looks like that a little bit, but it's really not. It's very complex. I really like that this complexity is shown, and I do think that, you know, being a teenager, it's not always easy to find out whom you love, for example. So I do like the way that is portrayed. I do really like the way that Darius's body issues with his body, are portrayed. I think that's very important for especially teenagers to see that, you know, you can feel uncomfortable in your body and it's not your fault. It's just, you know, the pressure of society to look certain ways and stuff that makes you feel that way. On the other hand, I feel like his relationship with Landon is a little bit difficult because obviously there is this tension because of, you know, things that involve touching in this relationship. And they obviously view a relationship quite differently. And that's just something that I think in general, it's just a lot of people don't talk about what a relationship means. They are just like, are you my boyfriend or are you my girlfriend or are you my partner? And the other person's like, yes. And then, you know, people just go into these relationships and they don't see it the same way, kind of. So, for example, for Landon, he says multiple times that in a relationship, he wants to have sex. And that is obviously a theme that is running through the book. And yeah, I just think there is not even miscommunication, just no communication there. And I feel like that could be explored more, because Darius is quite awkward. I mean, it's his first relationship. And still, I feel like, you know, this last hour won't kind of save that. I just wish there would be a little bit more conversation, because while the book really portrays that problem with, like, you know, first relationships, talking about sex with your partner when you don't feel quite comfortable with it, it does show the problem, but it doesn't really show any solution. And I think that's quite sad, because obviously, especially books can teach you these things. They can show you how to communicate with your partner, and that it is important to communicate with your partner, especially when you feel uncomfortable. And that's just a little bit of magic that I'm missing in this book right now. But yeah, apart from that, still enjoying it. Excited to finish it, and yeah, it's just nice. It's just a really nice book. I really enjoy it. And then last night I started reading On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. This is very interesting. I'm about 44 pages, I think, in right now, and I am enjoying it. I think my work is really busy right now, and I feel just a bit too drained for a book like that. So I'm just worried I won't enjoy it as much, because I would need more brain power to really enjoy it. So tomorrow is a holiday, so I don't have to go to work, and I hope that maybe that will give me the kind of brain space to really get into this book. We'll see. Maybe I'll just play Sims, to be honest. But yeah, I really enjoyed the beginning. I do like this setup of the letter format. It's obviously not really written like a letter, because it would be like the longest letter. But I do like the words that are used to imply that this is a letter and that this is addressing the mother. And I think the kind of language that is used is very well done. And also because obviously the mother would know all of this, the thoughts are presented in a world as if are presented in a way. I'm sorry, as I said, my brain is just not working. They're presented in a way as if you as a reader already know all of these things. And so you have to piece the story together. You get these glimpses and you have to actually work with your mind to make the story out of it. And I do really, really like that. I think it's a very clever way to write a book because, you show your readers that you trust them to get it. Also, there were already a couple of pages that dealt with the war in Vietnam, which has been, before I was born, and is also something that we're not really taught in school too much. So everything I know about that war is basically from pop culture, which I think is horrible. But, it's enough to have like a vague picture of it. So I'm intrigued to see how much of that will come up in this book. So far, I feel like I am lacking a bit of the knowledge to see the whole gravity, but then like some parts are just so clear, like when it talks about a person watching a school go up in flames because of the bombs. I mean, that's just an image that you see and you can't unsee again. So yeah, I think in some scenes I'm missing the nuance a little bit, but other scenes are just so clear that you're just horrified. So yeah, that's a lot to say for 44 pages. I'm just really glad I found this in the library. I'm really excited, as I said, and I think this will be a phenomenal read. It's just that my brain is not cooperating, so hopefully that will change now, and I'll keep you updated. So this is the most beautiful book. I'm not so good at, analyzing books and stuff like that. But I was just talking to my partner about it, and I've just finished part 1 and have started part 2. And I feel like this book has this melancholy that I can relate to when you're an adult and you're looking back on your childhood. And on some level, you finally understand your parents, and on another level, you're also old enough to see what you would have done differently if you had been in your parents' shoes, basically. And then there's this really childish love that still persists through all of that, because when you were a child, you needed to love your parents. It was the way you survived. So yeah, that's just a feeling I can relate to, kind of, and it's very beautiful. So, last night, or this morning actually, I finished the last couple of minutes of Darius the Great Deserves Better, and I very much enjoyed it. I decided to give it 4 stars. I think that's the rating I gave the first book as well. I really, really enjoyed this book. I don't know why it just never quite makes the 5-star jump for me. But I think it's just such a nice, cozy story, very relatable, great for teenagers, and yeah, it's just a place I really like to return. So I really hope that Adib Khurram will write another book with Darius as a character, because I just feel like his life has so much potential for even more. And yeah, I think we left off at a very nice point. Like, the last sentence made me feel so warm inside. It was so nice. But I still feel like with the things that happened during the end, there is potential for more stories, for more explorations and stuff like that. So I think I've talked about Sorab before in this vlog. It's the best friend of Darius, and he's part of the, let me try to pronounce it correctly, Baha'i, I think it's called in the audiobook. And I actually wanted to find out what it is, because I hadn't heard of it before those books. And I really liked the exploration of that, because this is a religious group, actually. I wasn't quite sure if it was like ethnic or religious, but it's a religious group that lives in Iran, and they are persecuted quite harshly because Iran has a very the government is very I don't know how to say it, but they had this revolution. If you're interested in that, I would highly recommend the graphic novel Persepolis, because that depicts the whole thing quite well. Because I didn't know about this before, but then I read Persepolis, and then I could piece together a little bit what had happened in Iran. And so you will understand why the government now is very harsh against other religions. And yeah, I think it's very interesting to incorporate that in these books. And I really hope that this series continues, especially because of Sorab. I think, I would love to hear more. But overall, as I said, very, very interesting. So I think Iran is a very interesting country to read about, and I would highly encourage you to do that, even though it can be hard. You know, it's always hard to read the histories of countries. I don't think that there's any country in the world that has a history that is only like flowers and rainbows. So but I think it is important and interesting to read about, and I highly recommend those two books to start. So Darius, The Great is Not Okay, and Persepolis, I think, are great entry points into reading about Iran. Okay. Then I wanted to talk about the elephant in the internet and world right now, and that is Israel and Palestine. Obviously, it has been all over the media when this video comes up, because, you know, I will be filming this for a while. But I have heard people say that they think if you participate in the Asian Readathon, you should address that, and I definitely feel the same. As you may remember, when I did my little TBR at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I want to read a book that focuses on Palestine and Israel. So I am still planning to read that. I will read that next. I had to wait a little bit to start it. That's why I first went into On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, because obviously right now it's become so overwhelming. And I will link the video of Trevor Noah down below, because I felt like that was the most helpful video I've seen on it so far. And I would also recommend following people on Twitter that educate. And it's just a very hard topic, especially since I'm German. It's very hard to speak out against Israel, and I know that this shouldn't be the case, but I think for many people, especially in Germany, that is still the case. We have a very complicated history with the Jewish people, and it's always hard to, to come out and talk against them in any way. I still feel like this is a moment in time where it's very dangerous to keep silent. Obviously, this is a conflict that has been going on for like many, many years. And I've also seen people, saying that conflict is not the right word for it. But I don't know the right word for it, to be honest. I know it's problematic to call it a conflict. And as I said, I just highly recommend the video by Trevor because he talks about how uneven the power dynamic really is. And that, with like a lot of the protests going on in the last couple of years, we started to really stand up to bullies, like if it's the police system in the US or, other things. And I feel like this is also a time to stand up against the bully. But as I said, it's just a very, very hard topic. And I think, it's one of the most controversially discussed topics that we currently have. And so a lot of people just try to stay out of it. And it's just, I think it's just so hard to say the right thing about it. But again, I'll link Trevor's video. I think you should watch it, especially if you don't really know where you stand. And it's just horrible. Reading the news about people dying is always horrible. And I just wish there was a way to stop all this. And I'm pretty sure there is. And I think we as a world will need to find it. And I don't think that we can just be like, oh, they're gonna figure it out down there. Because, the root of the problem lies with us. And so, I think it is not something that we can look away from easily. But that would be that. Just educate yourself. Don't close your eyes and hope that it will just go away, because it won't. We have many, many years that show that it won't just go away. And on another heavy topic, I just started my audiobook Know My Name by Chanel Miller. It's also read by the author, which I'm excited to see how I like it. I've only listened to the first couple of minutes of it yet. I already almost cried twice, so this will be an interesting experience, definitely a very hard topic for me to read. That's why I have not gotten this book earlier, but also a 5-star prediction. I think I will absolutely love it. So I'll keep you updated on. So I finished part 2 of On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous in the bathtub, and I liked it a lot. Part 2 is a lot about the author's or the character's queerness. It's really hard to kind of explain this because I feel like this is a novel, so it is fictional, but I feel like the feelings are the author's basically, so I guess he put a lot of himself into this main character. But it was a lot about the queerness of the main character and his kind of first relationship with another boy, how that started, and then how it progresses. And I think it's very, very interesting because this definitely focuses on aspects of, internalized homophobia. And I always thought it was quite interesting that when you look up studies that were done during about AIDS, like kind of health studies, they always talk about men having sex with men. They don't talk about gay men in these studies because a lot of these men actually don't consider themselves gay. They just have sex with other men. And I think that's very, very interesting and definitely something that I kind of felt not on page, but like as an, underlying thing with this boy. Yeah, and it's just very interesting. The ending of part 2, I must confess, got a little bit too poetic for me. It is beautifully written, but I have no idea what it wanted to tell me. But that's just because I'm not good with these kind of things. But yeah, I'm really excited to go into part 3 now.
So I just finished On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and I decided to give this book 4 stars. It's going a little bit towards the 3.5. I really loved the beginning of this, but I feel like in the end it didn't quite give me what I wanted. I think in some parts this got too much into the like poetry style, like not that there were poems in it, but just like the writing style was like really vague, and I didn't always get what it was trying to say. And I also think that I loved the family aspects of this book the most, and I was intrigued that this also dealt with themes of, you know, being queer and also the drug use in the 90s in the US. But I don't know, I just felt like this was all a little bit disjointed for me, which probably was mostly because of the language. Sometimes, you know, I'm just not smart enough to really get it. But I still think it's beautiful. The language is definitely beautiful, and I really like the feeling that is transported in this book. And yeah, I don't know. I just wish I would have loved it even more. I really wanted to, but I'm still happy that I read it, and I would highly recommend it if you're interested in this book, you know, dealing with the Vietnam War and being Asian American in the 90s, I believe. So yeah, very, very interesting. A second book finished for the Asian Readathon. So I'm off to start the next book for the Asian Readathon. This one in English is called The Almond Tree. And I quickly wanted to mention that this book is somewhat controversial or problematic, and I would highly recommend, if you're interested in this book, to read the Goodreads review by a person called Suzanne Abulhava. If you look up the book on Goodreads, you will find it. It is very highly rated, so it's way up on the top, so you just scroll down a little bit. And this person is writing about how the book is problematic and racist, so I decided to still read it because this is a book my mom gave me like years and years ago, and I know that if I don't read it now, I will never read it, and maybe I shouldn't read it, but I always like to, you know, just make my own opinion. But I wanted to mention that this review is really interesting because this person goes into the different aspects of the book, and I think after reading it I will understand the review even better. I've also seen in that review that the main character in the English edition has a name that is very problematic because it's basically an Israelized, I don't know how you pronounce that word, version of the name Ahmed. And I've seen that in the German edition, they have changed the name, so the character is actually called Ahmed and not that kind of Israeli version of it. So yeah, I'm glad to see that they did these little changes to make it less problematic in that aspect. But obviously this is written by a Jewish American person, so it's very hard to write about the conflict of Israel and Palestine from that point of view. I would like it if you can recommend me books that are actually written by Palestinian authors. I also will look into it after finishing this book to see if I find any that were maybe even translated into German, so I can give it to my mom as well, which would be really cool. So yeah, I'll definitely look into that. But I just wanted to do this quick disclaimer to, you know, let you know that this is not a, you know, uncontroversial book. I think it's very interesting if you go through the Goodreads reviews, you can see that the book either gets 5 stars from usually white people or 1 stars. And yeah, I thought that this one review was really eye-opening, so I highly recommend checking it out if you're interested in the book or
Israel, Palestine in general. So, yeah. I'll talk to you soon. So I had a very rough day at work today for some reason. I don't feel that great. But sometimes you feel very, very dumb. I have one of those moments today. I told you about the review of this book on Goodreads by a person called Susan Abulhava. And turns out this is actually an author. So this person is a person from Palestine, and they actually wrote books about it. So today I ordered one of those books. I can't tell you the English title right now. It should arrive here tomorrow, and then I can tell you because I ordered the German copy, so I can give it to my mom afterwards. Because as I said, this is a book that my mom gave me, and so I wanted to look for books that were actually written by, I think it's Palestinian authors, so I can get my mom one of those as well. So yeah, I'm very excited that I found this out. Actually, because of a person on Twitter who posted their reading list for the Asian Readathon, and they had the newest book of that author on their list. So yeah, very excited. I am now 75 pages into this book, The Almond Tree, and yeah, so far it is very, very bleak, very, very horrible. Nothing very nice has happened, and yeah, I'm struggling a bit to connect to the characters just because there's so much misery. Sometimes you just, I don't know, I think it's also because the main character is a small boy, and that's always a little bit hard for me to build a connection there. But we'll see how it progresses, and I'll let you know. Also, I think I've listened to about 2 hours, maybe more, of Know My Name, and I'm enjoying this a lot. It's a very hard read, but I think I will get a lot of this done this week, so I will try to update you a little bit as I go. But I feel like this is a book that I can't really talk about so well. I just enjoy it very much, and yeah, I think equally excited to listen to it and afraid to listen to it. So yeah, I'll just keep you updated on that one as well. So I just finished part 1. I guess it will have like maybe 3 parts, maybe 4. And so far I can totally see the critique that I have mentioned before of this book. There's a couple of things that irk me a little bit with it. I think that the writing style is fine, but I really don't like how the main character is portrayed as a, I don't know how you call that in English, but basically I would call it a wunderkind. So he has this natural ability for mathematics, and I just don't like that. It just feels very meh to me because, yeah, I don't really believe that, well, I guess, some people do have, certain abilities that others don't, but I think it's a little bit unbelievable that he will have left school at like, I don't know, 11 or something, and still wins this mathematical contest. I don't know, I don't like reading about characters that are portrayed as, very special because they were born with this amazing ability. I think that we all struggle through our lives. And we all learn, and yeah, maybe you have like a little bit of an advantage because you can easier learn languages or you can easier understand mathematics, but I think that is much more what you've been taught as a little child and much less, that natural ability. It's just something that irks me. Probably because I'm a sociologist and we just don't like that notion very much. And then obviously now with this contest that he won, he gets a, what do you call that in English? Basically they pay for his studies at university, and I do see the point that this is like kind of the white saviors thing, that basically to turn his life around, he needed the intervention of the same people that destroyed his life in the first place, and now he's like supposed to be thankful for it. I don't know. I also feel like the actual teacher doesn't get enough credit. Like, he is the man, to be honest. I will continue reading this, and then also, I wanted to mention this because earlier the book I talked about arrived. So this is by the Palestinian author that I mentioned, and the English title is The Blue Between Sky and Water. And this author also has a new book out currently, so if you're interested, I think those would be very, very timely reads. I don't know if I will read this during May because I'm slow right now. We'll see. I'll keep you updated. So I finished part 2 of The Almond Tree last night, and I wanted to give you a quick update. There's still a couple of things that I don't really like about this book, but it is very easy to read. The writing style is, quite simple to fly through. So, I did read almost half of the book yesterday. So in this second part, it mainly follows the main character during university, and I definitely see that the portrayal of this is quite problematic, especially with his professor. So there's this one professor who also has like the weirdest name ever, and he really hates Arab people and the Palestinians. He tries to get the main character kicked out of the university, basically. And this is mild spoilers, so if you want to pick up this book, maybe skip over this. But basically, they find a way, or the main character finds a way, so they have to work together, so he can show this professor that he's basically just a person. And a lot of this is like weird, and especially there's this one scene where the professor kind of opens up to him and talks about how his family was killed by the Nazis. And that scene really is like, the summary of this book, basically, because what happens is that the main message is that the Palestinian boy that we're following, Ahmed, he's supposed to forgive this professor for his hatefulness just because he had lived through so much trauma. And I don't know, I just don't like that message. If you're a dick, it doesn't matter if you have lived through a lot of trauma. You can always get help. And just in general, the message is always that the main character has to forgive these Israeli people for what they're doing. There's also this one dude who at the first day in the library forces him with a weapon to do his homework, and then they become friends because he's so smart and he helps that person do the homework. And it all just feels like just like the message is be a very, very special person and forgive everyone around you that they're dicks, and then we can have peace. I don't like that. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. It should not be the Palestinians feeling for the poor Israelis because lots of them have lost people in the Holocaust. That's not how it works. So yeah, I don't like that. Also, one thing I did not like is the way that these studies are portrayed. I mentioned this before, that the main character is portrayed as this like really special physician or physicist. Physicist is the right word, sorry. And so basically this chapter is like, he wins this prize, he wins this prize, he finishes his impossible PhD in 3 years. Like, he's so amazing, and now he has this amazing job opportunity. And as someone who is currently struggling to finish their PhD, this is very discouraging. It basically portrays it as, you know, you don't even have to try because there's these special people who just fly through it and they win all the prizes anyway. So don't even try if you're not that special. Yeah, I just fell asleep with a very bad feeling in my stomach. And the last point is the love interest that is introduced in this part. I think her name is Amina, and the way that ended, oh my god, the main character is such a dick. This poor girl, and again, this is a spoiler if you want to read this book, but this poor girl is married off to her cousin because he basically sucks at life. And the main character is like, oh my god, she only used me. Like, no. I mean, who's the villain here? It's definitely not Amina. Like, she has no right to say she doesn't want to marry her cousin, and you're like, she used you? Like, what? And yeah, especially the way that the women are portrayed in this book is not great. Like, first of all, almost all of his sisters die at one point in the book. Maybe all of them. I don't know. We have one left. Maybe she'll die later in the book. And that one sister that survives is married off to a widower who has 7 children when she's like 14 or something. And the whole family is just super happy about it. And yeah, it just feels a little bit meh because, yeah, I don't know. I just have an issue with that. I don't know. So yeah, mixed feelings about this book. And I hope I can finish this tonight and tell you more. So I think I have exactly 9.5 hours left of my audiobook, Know My Name by Chanel Miller. And I really enjoyed this book a lot. I think what I especially like, besides, you know, the way that Chanel Miller is like a very charismatic person, I would say, like you instantly feel for her, and I think she portrays herself with all her flaws, so you definitely, you know, understand her and feel for her. But apart from that, what I really like is the way that she has this kind of pattern where she'll talk about the case and she'll talk about, you know, the hardships that come with such a case. And then she always has these chapters in between that are somehow about art or about, you know, some kind of expression of herself that kind of helped to root her back into herself. I'm not explaining that well, but there's this one part where she talks about taking a class for printing, and now she just talked about this comedy show that she did, and I just really like that. While obviously the whole trial is very depressing and it's very hard to listen to her story, especially with, you know, the court dates being pushed back and what that means for her life, which is horrible. There's always these little glimpses where you see her find a little bit of herself again within all the trauma. And that, I think, is so great because it gives you hope, and I think in the end this book will be hopeful. But obviously for all of the proceedings with the case, it's just discouraging as fuck. When you listen to this, you know why not more women come forward with, you know, allegations of like sexual assault and stuff like that. If you listen to this, you totally understand that these women rather, you know, have their attackers go free and are like, I'm just gonna move on and I want normalcy back, I want my life back. And that's obviously not what happened to Chanel for many years because of this case. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that audiobook, but it's a tough read to be fair. And now I think I will take a bath. And my goal for today is to finish the almond tree, so we can move on to talk about something else. So I finished part 3 of this book in the bathtub. I think part 3 is my least favorite part of the book, just because it mainly focuses on relationships, marriage, and family and stuff like that, which is just not something that I'm interested in. Also, I feel like the time jumps are getting bigger and bigger, and it's just hard to kind of keep track of it. And then this is gonna be a huge spoiler for this book, so if you want to avoid spoilers, skip over this part. But basically, he falls in love with this Jewish girl from America, marries her, then brings her back to his family, and then she's killed by the Israelis. And that just felt wrong. It just felt like, shock value, like, it just felt like, the white woman dying just so you're shocked. And I did not like that. I did not like that at all. So I'm currently in the last part and I have about 30 pages left, so I'll talk to you when I finish that.
Okay, so I just finished this book. The last part was actually my favorite part because I felt like this was like a little bit more balanced. In this part, the main character basically goes to Gaza to meet up with his brother Abbas, and I think if this book had focused more on the relationship of these two brothers, I would have enjoyed it more. I think that they actually are very, very interesting because obviously, did I talk about this before? I don't know. But our main character, Ahmed, he's the firstborn son, and quite early on, his father is put in jail, and so Ahmed's job basically is to care for his family, and so he promises that he will find a way to support his family. And that is kind of the trajectory of his life, and it's what he does. He then goes to study and he, sends all the money he earns back to his family, and he actually doesn't buy new clothes as all his fellow students do, because he wants to save the money for his family and stuff. And then he has this brother, Abbas, who is the second born son and kind of grows up in his shadow because, I've talked about it before, Ahmed is this really physicist prodigy, whatever child. And I think Abbas is a very interesting character because he's a lot more angry. So while Ahmed is caring for the family, Abbas cares about his country and his people, and so they develop in very different directions because Ahmed tries to go the right way and to earn money and to provide for his family, and Abbas is going more into a radical direction to fight for his country and his people. And so in the end, we get actually some very interesting debates between the two. This book should have focused more on that because I think that's a very interesting conflict. Because in the end, I think both of them were right in a way and were wrong in a way. But then it didn't have enough space to really develop that. And yeah, I think that the book kind of missed out there. I think overall, I will give this 3 stars. It is a very fast read and it is definitely interesting. And I think it has its merits, especially in the last part where it debates, whether you should fight with violence or try to protest in a peaceful way. And I think these are discussions that we had last year also with the Black Lives Matter movement, because a lot of people said that when there was looting, that the kind of credibility of the movement was impaired and that people wouldn't care about the movement anymore. And on the other hand, people were like, yeah, but we need at least a slight amount of violence for the media to cover to cover these protests at all. And I think a very similar discussion is going on in here, where Abbas is like, how else would we get the world to see us if we wouldn't send the rockets? And it's just an interesting idea and an interesting discussion. And as I said, I think in the end both are wrong and right, so they both have like good arguments. And yeah, I just wanted to see that developed more and focused on more. And I just felt like the middle part of the book just fell flat for me. I didn't need that kind of like plot line with the professor, and I didn't need the plot line with the first wife. I think if this would have focused more on this family aspect and just, the general question of how can you bring about change in a situation where like that, where really, I mean, what can the Palestinians do? So I think I will give this 3 stars. I don't think it was like completely bad, but I also don't think this was the best book ever written. And yeah, it's just somewhere in between for me. But I think it was an interesting perspective. And yeah, I just feel like the time frame, it just covers like 50 years in such a short book. That's always a little bit too much for me. So that would be my 3rd book done. So far I have finished Darius the Great Deserves Better. Oh yeah, obviously, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and now The Almond Tree. So 3 books down. 1 I'm currently in the middle of, and at least 2 more books on my physical TBR, maybe 3. So the next book I want to read kind of as a palate cleanser is the Japanese myth book, and I hope that maybe I can finish that during the weekend. And then next week I can go into my new book that I have right here. That would be option number 1. Or maybe I also still need to read a book for my favorite genre, which is fantasy. And I thought about reading Empire of Sands for that. Empire of Sand, I think it's called. But it hasn't arrived yet, so yeah, that's the plan for now. But I'm very, very happy with my reading for this readathon. I really didn't think it would go so well.